don't know what that means, Nicholas. You want me to sit still? This is nonsense.
From the top.
From the top. Welcome
Yes.
to 6-Minute Increments, where we discuss business and legal topics. We're here today with Jeff Bartkoski. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jeff?
Sure. I'm a retired Navy captain. I spent 30 years active duty in the Navy, flew helicopters while I was in the Navy. Got a chance to do a few other things over those years. And
Can I just interrupt you for 1
yes.
second? I did bushwhack you. Beth was in the Army. Did she tell you that?
No, she did not
was.
tell me that.
And did she tell you that she tried to send her daughter to West Point?
No, she didn't.
I tried to get her to go to Annapolis. She didn't do it.
Well, it's good you didn't go to West Point. That we don't, or your daughter didn't. We don't have that. We don't have that issue today.
We don't have that issue anymore. But I had to get that out there.
That's awesome. No, after a long time in the Navy, actually, I finished up. What brought me to Rochester was I was in charge of the ROTC unit at University of Rochester, so that was neat. And then from there, I had the opportunity to go to Mercy Flight Central.
It was where we met.
It is, and I've been blessed really to be there since 2014. I was there for 8 years, took a little hiatus with retirement, and then came back in July as helping them transition to a new CEO. And it's been just an incredible experience to be leading an organization like Mercy Flight Central.
Now, what would you say has been your experience between the Navy and the nonprofit world? What's been the biggest difference?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's certainly similarities, leading people. So, that's a major similarity, but otherwise a whole lot of differences. I'd say one of the biggest differences from a business perspective in particular, in the Navy, you execute a budget that's given to you. You may have some input into the development of the budget, but you don't generate revenue. You perform a mission. If you're running a business, you have to generate revenue. You're responsible for the income that comes in to be able to pay the folks, to keep the lights on, to be able to make that mission possible. And with an organization like Mercy Flight Central, that's both the operational part of it, but it's also the neat part of it about engaging the community, because without community support, of course, Mercy Flight Central wouldn't be here. So that's been very different.
What about like fundraising? How's that been as an experience for you? I mean, what do people not know or think about when they think of working with a nonprofit or donating to a nonprofit? What should they keep in mind?
I think in our case, while we do have a revenue source outside of donations, we really wouldn't be here for the 32 years or 18,000 patients if it wasn't for a community that embraced us. It's really a sense of they know they want, they know they want the job to be done by a not-for-profit with that sense of just serving the community. But with that comes a realization that they have to help own it. They have to help provide for it. And that's exactly what we've seen. So for me personally, it's actually been a lot easier than I thought it would be, because it's so easy to believe in what we do and how we do it and the quality that we do it, that you're selling something that, if you could say, people want to buy, they want to be part of. And that's been fun for me.
From an employment perspective, I mean, how easy or difficult is it, I guess, to find people to fit into that mission? I think from our perspective, nonprofits, sometimes the pay is a little less than you might be able to get someplace else. But, how do you attract talent?
The attraction for the talent maybe is also the challenge for it. We have excellence is truly a core value, and the quality of the medical care and the flying that we do in every aspect of one of our employees is really high end. So we're not receiving an employee who's new to their trade. Our nurses didn't just get their nursing degree. Our paramedics have already been a seasoned paramedic. Our pilots have already come with a long history of successful aviation before they come to us. So it's difficult to find that employee, but then that's also what draws that employee to us, because they know that we're performing at the top of the game. I mean, we've often been compared to a flying ICU, so there's a lot of autonomy for those medical providers. But of course, with that, you better be good.
You have to attract people from out of state, or do you find a lot of talent locally?
I'd say most of our clinical providers do come from the region that we serve, which is this Finger Lakes all the way over to Mohawk Valley. But the pilots it's a little bit wider spread. We do receive a lot of our pilots come from a military background because they've got that night vision goggle background. They've got that challenging flying already in their portfolio, if you want to call it that. So a lot of them might come from Fort Drum or from other places that they've served, and then we'll find out about them.
Now, this isn't probably necessary for you, but this is a safe space. And it's okay to be honest with us. When you were in the Navy, you probably had some experience with lawyers, but again, this show is trying to talk about the interaction with you as a nonprofit CEO, your experience with lawyers, what things you learned that you didn't know, things that you thought that you should share with somebody else if they're getting into the space. What's been your experience dealing with outside legal counsel?
You know, it's funny. From both my military experience, but then also as I have my not-for-profit experience and talk to others that are in a for-profit world, it's kind of a similar joke / first experience that you have with the lawyer, that it's like, well, I don't want to have to deal with the lawyer. They're just going to tell me no. I need to figure out how to do what I'm trying to accomplish.
We say no?
Yes, you say no. It's actually one of your specialties. But then you
First day of law school, they practice. Everybody can say no. Okay.
That's great. But really, as I've been in the job, I've found out the great opportunity that you have to have them make your business better, to be able to say yes, to figure out how to solve a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difficult time is that very often creative business ideas have not been contemplated by the law. So you're forced to look at something and be like, it's not necessarily approved. So it's getting through the fact that if you're looking for something to say, yes, I can, you're not going to find that. What you're going to find is say, as I can't find anything that says you can't. And that is a comfort level that takes a lot of time to develop, to say to a client, yeah, I think we can do this because I can't find anything telling you can't.
Or yes, but not without risk.
Right.
But then
the
your
risk
lawyer helps
mitigation.
you look over the risks, and those risks are either acceptable or not. But, if you're willing to have some risk, you can still get to yes.
Sometimes in the consultant world, a business leader will figure out, well, I knew that. I didn't really need to pay, that price for that consultant's advice. But in the area of law, most of us realize, okay, we're not in those books. We don't really know that stuff. And so that's where that type of consulting is really, really beneficial. And it does give you the freedom to move forward once you know, okay, here's what the law says. So we can't go that way, but we could possibly go this direction.
Of all the lawyers that you've worked with, what ones would you say, you don't have to name names.
Yep.
That's not necessary. We're not looking for that. Name names. No, how is the information given to you that you found the most useful? I think a lot of lawyers have a tendency, especially as outside counsel, to be like, here's two options, take a pick. I mean, what have you found to be the most useful way, practical legal advice that you could take in action with the organization?
Well, I think it does help to cite the language of the law. That way I can see in my own eyes. There was a day I thought about being a lawyer. So, it's certainly being able to see it gives you, okay, this is the black and white part of it. But then also providing some level of an option to say we can do this, and then also having the dialogue. So back and forth. For me, I'm going to want to challenge that lawyer and say, well, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this, and kind of force that lawyer to then their knowledge going back that they have to interact with what I want versus what they know to be true in the law. How can we work through a solution? So I think the bottom line, it's that give and take, and that being willing to challenge the lawyer, and then the lawyer challenge you back.
Now, what would you say drove you to contact a lawyer in the first place? I think this is a thing that lawyers don't always think about. In terms of what made you go to a lawyer? What were you seeking from them?
An assurance, or at least as close as you can get to an assurance, whether it be in a contract review, to make sure that I need a second set of eyes on this, because this isn't. So, it's in aviation speak, I'd say kind of covering my six, so it would be that sense of being able to, okay, yeah, this isn't my level of expertise. I need somebody to take a look at this. That's kind of from a contract standpoint. Other areas, I might not even know where to go. And like, so when you talk about personnel matters or some of those type of issues, I know I'm out of my league. And so I need somebody else who deals with this, has been there, done that.
Now, because this goes back to what you said about being able to challenge the lawyer. And I'll give you the psyche of the lawyer afterwards. This is leading questions. If there was an opposing counsel, they'd object right now. I mean, has anybody ever, as legal counsel, talked to you about what we sell?
Has a legal counsel taught? Well, certainly not in those terms.
And I think that that's a valid point. I think that most clients don't realize we were trained to actually sell a relationship.
Yeah.
So when you get challenged, a lot of lawyers fear that. They fear the interaction with their own client because the challenge seems to be that you're not in a strong, good relationship. But I do think that's what builds the best information for the client. More often than not, the clients are calling looking for knowledge or some sort of an insurance, but you have to be able to ask us questions.
Yeah.
We like to be the
Ideally-
only ones asking questions, I guess.
Ideally, where it works best is where both parties and the client and the attorney are comfortable with the pushback, the disagreement, et cetera. When one side or the other shuts down, that's when you don't get the best result.
Right. I mean, if you do, then as soon as the phone call ends, then the question comes up and you feel, okay, I'm not really a whole lot better off than I started.
Right.
And so for me, I mean, that's just my nature. I'm going to challenge you. And, I'm going to say, yeah, but what about this? But that doesn't make sense. I'm not doing that. So you got to come up with something else. That's the kind of dialogue
Right.
I want to be able to have. And if that doesn't work for that lawyer, we'll find somebody it works for.
Right.
Right. And I think that for clients, they have to find it is a personal relationship. Some don't like to have to ask them questions. It's sort of like going to the doctor and whatever they say, they follow. But I do think you aren't having somebody be your own advocate.
I mean, I look at a lawyer is, I think it undersells it, but it's a consultant in the area of the legal matters. And so ultimately, I'm the one responsible for the decision. So I've got to engage and make sure I get everything out of that opportunity with that lawyer while I have that lawyer available. And if I don't, shame on me, because I'm responsible for that
Right.
decision.
I do think that there's like two different branches of the legal world. One is the transactional side that I think you've had the most experience with. Then there's our evil brethren that are the litigation side. And I think they more so, it's harder to challenge them because the antiquated processes of civil process to go and commence a lawsuit, follow it through, motion practice and all of that. I mean, have you had any professional experience dealing with litigation matters or having to go through those or?
Thankfully not.
Yeah.
In those situations, the lawyers are driving strategy.
Correct.
Whereas in the transactional space, oftentimes the client has more say in driving strategy.
Right. My objective is to not get to that litigation.
Right. Ours as well.
Yes. What drives you crazy about lawyer bills, if anything?
That no matter what it was, it seems like, and I know it's not, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you eat, that you don't bill. But it just seems like they read my email and there was a bill. I read their email and I didn't charge them anything.
Right. I mean, personally, I like if there's not an action associated of some sort with the email.
I have no complaints. This isn't just promotion.
This is a safe space.
We can take
I
it.
have no complaints
We
with
can take it.
Pilato and Farrow because one, I think you've been reasonable in rates, and two, I don't have that sense. But there are some in the consulting world where you generally have, okay, this main product, there's a price to it. And then if I have to call you up on one little aspect of it, I don't see that show up on an invoice later. So, I'll often talk to my team, okay, make sure we really need to talk to the lawyer before we pick up the phone and talk to the lawyer because that's going to be a bill.
I mean, the premise of 6-minute increments is that's the metric by which we literally sell our lives.
I see.
We sell our lives 6 minutes at a time. So if I think in our world, it is said often, if you don't value your time, who will? I think it was Sigmund Freud that said that it's the bill that makes people actually listen to you and follow the advice that you gave. If there is no bill, they just don't see value in it. a great thing, though, for lawyers to hear is from your perspective. As you said, you don't often see what we've quote unquote eaten, the stuff that we did that didn't get billed. What do you think? I mean, this is putting you on the spot, but what do you think would be a good way to show that metric? Because I think a lot of us try to, but it doesn't always come through. And it'd be good to see it from the actual person receiving our bills perspective.
Well, I don't know the answer to this. So, like, for example, I'm sure there's some level of research that you would bill the client, and there's sometimes that you probably think, okay, that's just generally research I've got to do to be able to understand my profession, and that you don't bill because maybe it was a little more of a general nature. But nonetheless, it specifically helped that particular situation, that case, whatever you were working. So I think that's one thing that you can do, is providing some of that background, because it certainly eats up your time to be able to do that. And so that would be one major aspect of it, is what else that you do in the background that supports that. Then the other piece would just be, well, I don't know, that's probably it, because then it gets a little too washed out with, there's, of course, a career of experience that you bring to a relationship. But some of that was buildable too. So
Now, if there was one thing that you could have forewarned other people who are going to sit in a nonprofit CEO spot as a lawyer, what was one question you wish that you had asked a group of lawyers before you got into the role about dealing with us?
I don't know that something comes to mind, but one of the things I thought about as far as advice to give a not-for-profit leader when I came here is, first of all, I think a lot of people don't appreciate that a not-for-profit leader is often somebody who was very passionate about that cause. But the business world is a new world to them. And the legal world in the business world is probably even more new to them. So this is, it's not a world they're comfortable with. It's not a world that they have experience in. And so it's really a world of discovery for them. And one of the things that I found as I've engaged with some other not-for-profit leaders is they're seeking whatever advice they can on how to run a business in every aspect. So just one example would be, how do you create a board? Who do you want on your board? And one of the things that's been very clear to me from my experience, both with Mercy Flight Central, but also with not-for-profit boards I'm part of, make sure the lawyer is part of your board. A lawyer that has that breadth of experience, and ideally maybe some experience in your line of work. If you can put those two pieces together, that's not going to be your legal counsel, of course.
Right.
But on the other hand, that individual...
And we have to send letters for that. It's a whole thing.
Yep. But that person can be tremendous help to the other board members, to the leader, the staff leadership, the president, CEO of that organization, director, whoever they are. So that's one of the things I would say. Start with that as you're creating your board, making sure that you realize there's lawyers out there that are willing to do that. And that's just gold.
Well, I don't want to eat up too much of your time today, Jeff, and we never want to overbill the clients.
Yes.
This is double billing. But from a marketing perspective, we always want to remember to
Hit subscribe, like, share with a friend, share with an enemy. Sharing is caring.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Thank
My
you for your
pleasure.
time.
Thanks so much for
Thank
what you
you.
guys do for Mercy Flight Central. Thank you.